Triggs, do you agree?
It's so interesting hearing Troy Aikman, of all people, talk about it, because there might be no person more glorified in that building and also has to deal with that team on a daily basis. When you're thinking about the Fox #1 team, he's in that building all the time meeting with them. So he goes face to face with those guys and still has the courage to say that. I'm going to go with this route. It's been 23 years since the Cowboys played an NFC championship game. Not a Super Bowl, 23 years since an NFC championship game. The Patriots have been to 13 AFC championship games and have won 5 Super Bowls since then, right? The division rival Giants have won 2 Super Bowls since then. The Eagles have been to 6 NFC championship games, have been to 2 Super Bowls, and had an amazing parade and victory last year. These are all the rivals, right? And I look at this team, and the Cowboys over the last 23 years, I'm sorry to say it, are a mediocre franchise. That's the worst thing Jerry Jones could hear this morning, a mediocre franchise. And as we put the gold jacket on Jerry, and we did the Hall of Fame thing, and we did the Hall of Fame party, can't help but wonder if Jerry would give that Hall of Fame jacket back for one more chance at a Super Bowl ring. And right now, I think they are further from a Super Bowl ring than they have been since 2010, when they fired Wade Phillips midway through the season. So as we get further and further and further from the Holy Grail for Jerry Jones, do they need a rehaul? They do, but I don't think it needs to be as drastic as everyone thinks. I don't think you need to wipe the building out. There's a guy in that building, Will McClay, who is a VP of player personnel, who is said to be responsible for saying, don't draft Johnny Manziel, get Zach Martin, who's said to be the ear in Jerry. I think even if it's just to make the announcement, if they announce someone outside the Jones family as a general manager and said this person is going to kind of help foresee that, so it doesn't look like it's just Jerry running wild, which I don't think it is. I don't think it's Jerry running wild there. I think there is a lot of people who are Jerry, but right now, from the outside looking in, the owner is too involved. He's also the GM. Whether truth or not, I think they need to appoint some people at some positions that maybe don't have the last name Jones and say, hey, these guys are the ones who are going to help bring us back.
Do you ever see that happening?
I don't know. I don't know, because I don't think the roster is so terrible, and I think they're so tied to Jason Garrett. You know, for them to come out and say that they're going to give Dak an extension yesterday, come on, like, make them earn it.
I know.
Like, what are we doing?
It's complicated, isn't it?
It
because
is.
I love that Aikman said, you know, everybody wants to fire Garrett and fight. That's not the answer. You know, we've seen Campo and Chan and Parcells, and those guys don't win either. And yet, if you're a Cowboys fan, you're saying, we're not going to fire the owner. We can't really fire the GM because, complicated or not, it's in the family. I just keep coming back to the offense. I have to go back to the offense, because if I'm Dak Prescott, I just lost because I saw Marcus Mariota pull the ball out from a running back and then throw it with his left hand to a receiver you'd never heard of. And he says, I can do that. I feel like the Cowboys right now are looking at all these toys and all the other offenses, Fortnite and Xbox and Red Dead Redemption, and we're playing paddleball. We got a stick with a tire going down the street. Last point, I keep bringing up Norv Turner this week. Did you see the shot of Cam Newton this week? Do you think he likes his old 66-year-old offensive coordinator? Because he came to the press conference wearing
asked him to.
What's up, baby shirt. And is Dak wearing a Scott Linehan shirt? Look at the smile on Cam's face. It's not all young hotshots. You don't have to. You just have to keep up with the Joneses, and I mean that literally in this case.
And you don't see that smile on Dak Prescott's face, right? You mentioned, Peter, that they've been further away from winning a Super Bowl since they fired Wade Phillips. They'd be even further away if they clean house right now. And I agree with you. You don't wipe the slate clean and hit the ultimate reset button, because you hit the ultimate reset button, you're not looking at a Super Bowl for another decade. And I know if you're a Cowboys fan, you're like, well, what's another 10 years if it's almost been 25 right now? I feel like they do have the talent. Defensively, they have some superstars. Offensively, they have some players. And in moments this year, we saw them make plays with the best of the league. But I will say this. When it comes to reevaluating what everybody does, head coach, office coordinator, D coordinator, all the way down to the last person on the roster, do that this offseason. You don't walk out in the middle of the movie and say the movie is terrible. You wait until after the movie, then you look at it and say, okay, I spent the last 2 hours. I don't like it. I like it. Here's some things that could be better. Same thing with a football season. You can't sit back and say, everybody's going to keep their job. We'll do it again next year. No, this isn't that team. To your point, you have to go in, address what's going on, who's flawed, who's good for the squad, and who's going to help us win next year. I feel like the Cowboys are good, but they're definitely going to have to be some furniture moving after this. I think I'm talking about good right now.
You're super far away, but you're also saying they have a good roster. So I don't know what has to change, but I do believe the frustration on this team is that, and in waiting, is that they are good right now. What do you want on a team? You want a star pass rusher. They have that in DeMarcus Lawrence. He's the second most sacks in the league since 2017. They're a number 3 overall defense. You want a strong defense? They have it. Their offensive line isn't what it was, but it's still great. You have a star running back. You have a number 1 young wide receiver with all the talent in the world. There's some questions about who Dak is as a quarterback. But as far as a team in that division, I could see them still turning it around. So then part of me, as if I'm a player in that locker room or a fan of the Cowboys, I'm like, something has to change. I'm not convinced it's the players or the talent on the field, and that's what makes it all the more frustrating for me.
They need to make more moves in free agency. Look at the last 2 Super Bowl winners. They need to do that over the next couple of years.
4-5 team, and maybe the most boring team in the league to watch. And for Jerry, that second part might be even the most impactful, that no one enjoys.
Mediocre.
That impacts the bottom line. We know Jerry loves some money.
Hashtag GMFB talking more about this all day long, but we know that
Fred Gonzalez was a former first-round pick of the Colts. He won the Ohio 16th Congressional District, while Allen, playing 4 seasons with the Titans as a linebacker, won the Texas 32nd Congressional District. All precincts reporting. So that was a little bit of your political news this morning. A couple of former NFL players out there winning seats to the House. We've seen this time and time again. Steve Largent, Heath Shuler, et cetera, out there running for office. So
I love that we
seeing
had our
now.
own political campaigning here at the breakfast table yesterday.
Yes, we
Patrick
did.
Mahomes won.
That's right.
Chief correspondent.
That's right.
Peter Schrader.
Nice.
Made
It
it
helped.
happen.
It helped
Yes.
that Patrick Mahomes having a historic season. I would say that the performances were all wonderful.
I
It was
liked
more
it.
Mahomes winning than anything to do with the campaign.
You know what I think it was? I felt like it was because you really believed it, even
did.
more than they believed there.
Yeah.
You really, you spoke
In
from
your
here.
heart.
Yeah, I rolled up my sleeves.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Literally.
Yes, he did.
Great stuff from Will Silva.
I'm a working man.
Does anybody want to check in on the Vikings?
Yeah.
I feel like they're a Super Bowl contender that our show doesn't talk about enough. All right, Rick Spielman, their GM, said this about Everson Griffin coming off a great game. Quote, Everson's in a very good spot now, but it is not okay today. It's an ongoing thing. Everson is hell-bent on being a success story, but I want to make sure that as an organization, we put all the pieces in place that he needs to have the best chance of success. Everson coming off a monster game, and it was great to see him, hell-bent is the perfect way to put it, on the field after dealing with issues off the field. So we're about halfway through the season, guys. Which player do you think is hell-bent on being a successful story in the second half? Everson definitely is that to me.
No doubt. 3 of us were on the field for Eagles Jags in London. Nate had left us so we could go argue with Boomer Esiason, but the 3 of us were there.
Is that right?
And we're sitting there, and I'm watching a guy, a big, tall, red-headed quarterback with an AO1 T-shirt in the warm-ups. Carson Wentz was humming it, just humming the thing. We talked the whole offseason, how's the knee, how's the arm? And then he goes out there and made some stupid, crazy plays against Jacksonville. I think he looks incredible. I think he just got Golden Tate, who is incredible. And who does he have this weekend on the Sunday night game with Alan Chris on the call? The Dallas Cowboys at Lincoln Financial Field. You know, it's all Goff and Mahomes, and those guys are fantastic. Watch Carson Wentz make a run, not into the playoffs, but to the MVP conversation. Watch. He's ready.
All right, I'm going to go with the quarterback. Blake Bortles has
Okay, do not.
been
Go in
up
there.
and down.
What do you got?
He's
Blake
been up
played
and
well
down.
in that game, too.
He's been up and down, right? He did.
Okay.
Last season, of course, I was very high on Blake Bortles. I was very high on the Jags. This season, not so much, right? They started decent, I think 3-1, and then they dropped 4 in a row. And now they're sitting there, and everybody's thinking, are the Jaguars team of last year or the team that we know the last 5 years? Leonard Fournette is coming back sometime soon. He posted the other day, he said, I'm glad to be back. Now, his numbers with Leonard Fournette are not amazing. 11-7, 25 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. And it might not blow you away, but the comfort that he has with the running back like that allows a quarterback that has struggled a little bit to play better. And not to mention the next 4 games. Colts, winnable game. Steelers, who they beat up on last year. Bills, very winnable game. And then the Colts again. So these next 4 weeks are very big for the season. If they can kind of reverse what they just did, losing 4 and winning 4 in a row, it'll give Blake Bortles the confidence and the team enough confidence to rally around the quarterback, and he could have a great second half of the season.
Hey, what? I want someone in my life to have my back like you got Blake Bortles' back. I'm serious.
I can't quit him, Trakes.
I'm being dead serious.
I can't
I'm
quit
not
him.
being back
You've
Tuesday.
had
He's
this
back in
guy's
practice.
back.
I've seen some good
through it
moments.
all, man.
I've seen some good moments. And, I played with quarterbacks that were constantly criticized. So there's something about Blake Bortles and what he means at that
I
time.
respect that. I'm going to go with a quarterback who I think is going to be playing loose, playing free, and is playing with really house money right now. I think Baker Mayfield's got a cool second half of the season coming up. fire his head coach, fire his offensive coordinator, and I think his best game as a pro wasn't the Week 3 game against the Jets that everyone raves about. It was last week. I thought he went toe-to-toe with Mahomes, and if the defense can make a stop, and if you can maybe convert one of these two-point conversions, maybe we're talking about a Browns upset last week. Mahomes stole the show, but Mayfield played really well and moved the ball up and down the field. They started using Duke Johnson, and I think there's something cool when you start hearing from people in the organization, which I did, is that Baker seems energized. He seems enthused. He seems loose. And
that coaching change helps that?
I think the coaching changes everything. I think when you've got two offensive minds that view themselves as great offensive minds, and they are respected offensive minds, and Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley both in your ear, it gets clouded for a young kid, clouded for a rookie. Freddie Kitchens was like, let's go out there and let's do our thing. Baker looked very, very liberated on Sunday. I think he's going to have a great second half of the season.
I totally agree with pretty much everybody's call, especially with Fournette being back. Another running back coming back is Dalvin Cook. So I'll bring it full circle and go back to Everson and those Vikings. I think they're really scary. I think Aaron Rodgers, they're not looking so great in that division. Do I trust the Bears completely? They're just going to take the division? I don't know. The Vikings are going to look better and better as they have with their run game improving. Their offensive line, we know there's been a lot of combinations, a lot of injuries, a lot of shuffling, but they're sort of figuring it out as the season goes on, kind of like they did last year with Case Keenum. Dalvin Cook was back last week. He was dealing with a hamstring injury, kept him off the field. He had 10 carries for 89 yards, 4 grabs for 20 yards. That's over 100 yards in his first week back. Most importantly, he left the game quietly. There were no setbacks. There was none of that. None of that chatter about, oh, he needs another week off or anything like that. If they're running and Latavius Murray, we trust him to be a thing as well, they're going to be scary down the stretch.
He busted that big
really
run, too, didn't he?
He looked good.
Like a 70-yarder. That was huge.
Hate to admit it, but those Vikings are looking great right now. Up next, go